Uh, it helps if I have my mic on. So here we are, back at it, looking again. Um, yeah, so far today has been kind of interesting. I apologize now if I have to step away. Maintenance is on their way. I currently have water running out of one of my ceiling light fixtures. So it's been an interesting day so far while also wanting to go ahead and put this together. Um, yeah, this is just kind of a bit of an update on the state of the show now that things are back in production, give you an idea of what's going on and where I'm looking to take things here over the next couple of weeks and the months ahead. As I say, the show is back in production, and the latest episode is a conversation with Hannah Eckberg, and we sit down and talk about Abundant Earth Foundation and her work with them to move philanthropic resources from the grant and donor world into the permaculture community using the structures and tools of a nonprofit. And I really enjoyed having that conversation with Hannah. We're discussing some work on some other projects that I'm looking forward to announcing here in the next couple of weeks as those come online, and just the way that all of that is coming together. It's kind of cool to be doing some of this networking and communicating with colleagues again after taking such a long break to work on the stuff behind the scenes, to develop some of the classes and courses like the storytelling for personal transformation, getting used to live streams like this. Even though I may, as I say, have to cut away, it's nice just to have these regularly so that I can continue to practice this kind of work on camera, because it still feels weird after a decade behind a microphone, you know, this microphone for much of it. This is it. This is how the show was recorded for a long, long time. It was just me and a mic and some software, getting to talk to some people. So integrating video and some things like that are, yeah, they're just a lot of fun. And so looking at making sure that live streams like this are a regular part of the offerings from the podcast. I find that there's just so much that can be covered in these, both in the conversations that we can have. Oh, give me just a second. I'll be right back. Hello. Yep. All right, I apologize for that. It appears that one of my neighbors had above us had a new toilet installed, and that is currently, well, not sealed, and we have water running through the building. The beauties of working from home and handling and managing all of this. So, as I was saying, I've really been enjoying the live streams. It's been nice to have the one on one with you in the chat, answering questions, having conversations, things like that. And being able to do things like the conversations about all these books that are coming in that are just really amazing. But even doing 40, 50 episodes a year, I'm just not going to be able to cover everything that's becoming available in the permaculture community right now, and finding that these are a really enjoyable place to be able to share that kind of stuff with you. Structure the book reviews and share the information, and then us be able to hop into a chat. So I'm looking at continuing live streams. Um, like my schedule for returning to really normal kind of weekly releases and weekly or every other week live streams is going to be September. I want to put in as much as I can to release over the weeks ahead so that the show can ideally be back to weekly releases, but with wanting to spend the time with my children, they're going to be with us for another week and a half in the month of August. So I'm not sure if that will have an impact on getting to the next couple of interviews. But with that said, where things are now, on Wednesday, tomorrow, will be the first of two interviews with David Holmgren from my friend Dan Palmer that explored David's journey of design and the creation of permaculture. The first of those episodes out tomorrow is for Patreon. That'll be out for regular release this Saturday, July 31st. But with where that's at is the first one's really cool because this is David telling his story of coming to permaculture, talking about his early days at university and like kind of his radical nature and this cool program that he was a part of that was trying to kind of break down the traditional university program and having like students design their own coursework in like ecological design. David being on the panel to help select who some of the lecturers were going to be, like finally meeting Bill right at the time where David had a broken collarbone from a motorcycle accident, and all these really interesting little details that are part that I wish that we had more of from David, and are some of the things that I'd really wanted to capture, like in the back of my head for us to have available. And here they are from Dan, and they're fabulous. And I've only gone through and listened to and edited the first of those so far, so I only know the story up to where David met his second permaculture mentor, Hakaitane, and then they are moving into the conversation about like David becoming a consultant and designer in the mid 80s, and that's kind of where our conversation where that conversation leads off. But then here in a week or two will be the second of those, and that's also part of wanting to share these conversations at kind of a pivotal time in David's work now, as he's working with folks like Dan and others to put as much of the information that he's gathered over all these years as a designer and put them into places where people have access to it. It's one of those things I think about for where our first generation permaculture teachers are, that now more than ever it's super important to capture their thoughts and ideas now while they're still with us. And so Dan and David are working on another project called Reading Landscape. And if you search Reading Landscape, you'll find the campaign. They're raising some money to complete a film with David about his knowledge and experience when it comes to reading the landscape and what that process is like, which is just, it's super awesome. I've been able to see some of the things from behind the scenes that they've put together for some first clips, and it just looks really awesome. And it's a campaign and a project that I'm supporting as well, and so certainly something that I think that's worth checking out. After those two interviews from Dan with David, we get into my next interview, which is with my good buddy Eric Perro, formerly of The Push. He and I spent some time with each other when he was still living in Kentucky, and we recorded some things at the schoolhouse that were really awesome, walking around barefoot, getting what was known as Kentucky feet, as the bugs in the grass would kind of chew up around your ankles and things. Very weird cultural kind of thing. But he joins me to talk about his exploration now of biotech and mushrooms and the work that he's doing in Finland. His late wife, who was also a good friend of mine, they went back to her home in Finland, and Eric decided that they wanted to stay there. And so now he was just really called to those woods and is working on propagating chaga and really engaged in work when it comes to medicinal mushrooms. So he and I are, in addition to that interview coming out here shortly, talking about diving deeper into some discussion about medicinal mushrooms in general, those that are considered like nutraceuticals or good for our overall health. But we're also talking about potentially having a conversation about hallucinogenic mushrooms, psilocybin containing mushrooms, and what he's learning about those as a potential therapeutic, which is something that's interesting to me. I've sat with some friends over the years when they went on some journeys to learn more because of what had been coming out about what we can do to heal ourselves with those kinds of experiences. I sat with some friends who sought those as an outlet for their own healing experience and had some pretty interesting times with that. But we're talking about Eric and I coming back and having more of like a clinical conversation about what's emerging from the research and the literature. He's on a number of different boards and engaging with many different medicinal mushroom groups, and so has some information that I haven't been privy to, both in, sitting in personal exploration with friends and in the research. So yeah, I think we could have some really interesting conversations about those. If you're watching this and there's anything that you'd like discussed when it comes to mushrooms, medicinal, hallucinogenic, or otherwise, I'm more than happy to have more of those included in the conversation moving forward, depending on your interests. So just let me know. Leave a comment on the video, drop something into the chat. After that is an interview with David Dodd from co-host David Bilbrey that continues kind of like our exploration of business and permaculture and David's specialty. And then from there, I'll be looking at the series on agriculture and permaculture. Based on the conversations that I've had, it's gone in a slightly different direction than I had expected. We've spent quite a bit talking about what the difficulties are in agriculture and, by extension, permaculture, and how one can gain the necessary experiences to act in those realms and work in those realms, but also some deep discussions about land access and the possibility of like the different ways that we can work with accessing land from, some of the land back programs that are looking at rematriating land to indigenous peoples, as well as overcoming some of the barriers that have locked out Black and people of color from land ownership over the years, programs like redlining and things like that. And so now what can we do to get land to the people who are going to grow food, which is really interesting because in speaking with Sarah Mock, who's one of the people who will be included in that series, she says that, from her work, that the least value for land is growing food for people. And that was just kind of mind-numbing for me to hear, yet looking at how much land goes for when developers want to come in and buy it and things like that, these kinds of systemic issues start to make sense. And right now that series on agriculture and permaculture looks like it's going to be 7 episodes. I'm experimenting with some different things with this, which may change the release schedule for it, and actually mean that I'm releasing those episodes a bit closer together, because I'm looking at 7 episodes with 4 guests. But to do that, the first episode is an introduction to the series, who all the guests are, and then my usual who are you and what do you do? How did you come to do what you do? My normal intro. I'm looking at pulling those from each of the interviews proper and dropping those into this first episode so that you can kind of hear all of the guests up front as an introduction. Follow that then with a series of shorter interviews, the conversations with each of those people just about the work that they're doing currently. And then because I asked all of them about land access and the issue of getting farmers on the land, that like the 6th episode of that series will likely be just that topic from those guests, so we can hear a bunch of different voices on that one subject at once. And then of course I'll have a recap to the series that breaks down all the different resources that everybody shared with us, everywhere you can find them, and kind of make that the link heavy episode. But that's the idea of what I'm running with, just to try something different and see how that works. And of course, whatever feedback you may have for me when that series comes out, if you have some thoughts on how it works, if you'd like more like that or less, however, I'd love to hear from you. With where things are right now, that series should start in September and run, as I say, anywhere from like 4 to 7 weeks, which should get us through, near the early to end of October. So from there, overall, like that's everything that's currently planned. As I say, there are some secret projects that I'm looking forward to sharing with you here in the next, hopefully, month or so. There's a pretty big interview that I want to record with somebody, and once that interview is done, I can announce what one of these projects is, and that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be pretty intense. I'm sitting down with someone whose work I greatly, greatly admire, and they've invited me to sit down, and we're probably going to record somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of material with them all at once. But again, until that interview is in the bag, I don't want to say much more about it. But it should be what we're planning and talking about should be pretty awesome, and I think it'll be really exciting. As you see, there are some folks here with me today. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to drop into the chat, I'm going to kind of walk through what I'm thinking about for the next year, and then draw this particular live stream to a close. But we do have time for some Q&A if you'd like to drop something in there. So in addition to that series on, and this next period of releases, overall in the next year, I'm looking at about 45 regular episodes of the podcast, and trying to release those on kind of a weekly schedule with some information and updates on when those, if there is going to be a break or something, to let folks know. I want to build some flexibility into the show for some of these other special projects, as well as, wanting to go on the road, do some in-person interviews and things like that. And that, I figure, will give us, the 12th year of the show will be 45 episodes, just rolling along. With that, as I said at the beginning of all of this, once I turned the mic on, I really am enjoying these live streams, and so want to hold at least 24 of these, planning for one every other week, doing, at least one during a weekday like this, one on a weekend, and then alternate those, and then include more throughout the year. I do have my school schedule with my kids, so I know when they should be visiting us throughout the year, and with that, being able to kind of schedule these ahead of time. Just want to get through the rest of the summer before I start putting all the live streams on the calendar. With that, the next in the Permaculture Principles series probably isn't going to be until the end of August or beginning of September, because of ending the summer with my kids. And any chance of another Ethan Hughes interview? I still have like 12 to 16 hours of material with Ethan in video format, as well as audio recordings, a bunch of other stuff that I could be releasing around ideas like conflict transformation and appropriate technology, community building. There's a ton of stuff that I still have from Ethan in the archives that just have never made it on air, that I could put out. And then some folks that have asked about the Possibility Handbook, and I apologize for the delay on that. That's something that is still being worked on. I found that I had to kind of live into a lot of those experiences and find my own way in order to construct a good narrative. But once that's together, I expect to go visit Ethan and take a couple of crates of books with me for him to sign, for me to sign as those get shipped out. And then during that time, spend a couple of hours having conversations and catching up. When exactly that might be, I'm not sure yet. Just there's so much material still. But if you would like me to, give him a call and catch up before then, or anything like that, I certainly can put him on the calendar to see how they're doing and how Maine is treating them since their move there from Missouri. So, yeah. But yeah, from here, the next of these live streams is going to be 2 weeks out. I'm going to do that on Thursday, August 12th, same time. Really enjoying this 3 p.m. Time slot. Gives me enough time, if my notes are a little in need of improvement, to work on the outline, spend this time with you. Also breaks up my day a bit after editing and producing and everything else to hop in and have these chats. So, yeah, thank you everybody for coming in and joining me today. The next episode, as I say, of the show will be out here tomorrow for Patreon supporters, on Saturday for, regular release. You'll find that on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to the show. And yeah, I will catch you all again soon. As always, if you'd like, you can find me pretty much every day. I'm lurking on the podcast Patreon community, patreon.com/permaculturepodcast. I'm also on social media off and on throughout the week. Instagram, a little less than Twitter, but if you're on Twitter, you can find me at permaculturepod. Instagram is permaculturepodcast. And until the next time, may you spend each day creating the world you want to live in while taking care of Earth, yourself, and each other. Take care, everybody.